Okay. Earlier in the show, you might remember this, Dirk, it was only about 10 minutes ago.
Yeah.
We chatted a little bit about ISO and the various roles that they take on when they ensure standardization for organizations. We talked about the ISO handbooks and the technical committees and what they do. Well, some ISO standards are a little, are actually little seen or understood by the general public, even though those standards can actually have a really important role in the smooth functioning of modern society. And for a perfect example of this, you might want to check out the article, Why Intelligent Supply Chains Will Rule the World. A great title, written by Elizabeth Gazarowski-Denis, who is the editor-in-chief of the ISO Focus magazine. We published her article in yesterday's issue of the Quality Digest.
Good article.
It's like a really, really good, beefy article.
Yeah.
Now, some standards, of course, like ISO 9001 or ISO 14001, are pretty well known. Others, like ISO 50001 for energy management or ISO 31000 for risk management, they're a little more obscure, but they're drawing a lot of increasing interest lately from various people who are interested in energy and risk. The standard that Denis is talking about in this piece, however, is somewhat less familiar even than those, and even to those of us that cover standards for a living. The full name of ISO TS 24533-2012, which is actually a TS, a technical specification, is, on a quote, Intelligent Transport Systems, Electronic Information Exchange to Facilitate Movement of Freight and its Intermodal Transfer, Road Transport Information Exchange Methodology.
Yes.
Easy to remember.
Yes.
Easy to remember that. Now, that's quite a mouthful, as one would could hear. But I wanted to get out that jumble of words because it provides some important insight, I think, into what this article and what the standard is all about. Because as Denis writes in her piece referencing ISO TS 24533, it focuses on motor carrier transport interfaces through the supply chain, or those data systems, data items, I should say, that deal specifically with the key pieces of transport information critical to getting the goods to the marketplace without the delay related to data sharing. And I butchered that a little bit, but in other words...
Well, I mean, each of these different modes of transportation often use their own data and communication systems and
devices,
so forth.
That's the thing she's talking about.
Yeah.
This is really about the specs and standards being created or updating by ISO to manage that. I mean, these days it's all about information, right? I mean, and ISO's been doing a lot of standards, a lot of their stuff lately works in data and information more and more. ISO TS 24533 is attempting to ensure efficiency and security of data transfer. That's the key takeaway. And there are other standards to ensure the efficiency and security of the ship's goods themselves.
Yeah.
And I actually was a little confused about that. This isn't about the goods that are shipped.
No,
this is about the data communications between the organizations that are involved in international supply chains.
And kind of the key thing here is everybody's probably familiar with what do they call it? Intermodal transport, where you go from ship. Where do you go? You go from ship to
port,
truck
to the port,
and just all these different modes of transportation and communicating between them.
That's the problem, is there's not a lot of interoperability between all those data standards that deal with that. That's really what the standard is all about.
Right.
You know, the specification, like a lot of our specs, is really about information. And the standard really is going to attempt to deal with that by dealing with these data intermodal exchanges. Again, as I say, not the ship goods themselves. Denis mentions that the predecessor to this standard was actually published as ISO IEC 19845, Information Technology Universal Business Language. So this is another thing talking about interoperability of language and communication. And this clears the way for organizations linked through their supply chains to share data using a common format. And that is really what's happening here, is there a common format where the data can be shared throughout these intermodal supply chains without having to kind of translate it from one to the other and know how that works. And all this technical data essentially boils down to the fact that growing supply chains on the global basis are getting longer, more complex all the time, and that harmonization of the transport systems and data communication structures that underpin those supply chains is really of utmost importance. Denis, of course, works for ISO, and thus she represents kind of the global standards as the key to interoperability and smooth functioning of those systems. However, ISO TC 204, which is the technical committee responsible for standards around intelligent transport systems, has also reached out to many other international stakeholders to ensure that collaborative approaches are included in this complex issue. Organizations including the International Aerospace Quality Group, the IAQG, what we've heard about a lot through their OASIS supplier database,
right.
the UN Center for Trade Facilitation and Electronic Business, and the World Customs Organization, among others, are all keenly interested in the ongoing development of systems to speed efficiency in supply chain management. And I think the ultimate takeaway is that communication, what a surprise.
Yeah.
Communication is a good thing, right? If you can't communicate properly, if the data can't flow across these systems,
right.
it really is a problem. And obviously there's many interested parties that are invested in maximizing supply chain performance across the globe, and organizations working on this issue really have a number of stakeholders that they need to satisfy. So flattening out data transfer, making these systems work as efficiently and safely as possible, it's a top of mind issue, and it always is, and it always kind of will be. There's there's always political elements in this too. I mean, are we in a realm now where we want to continue to try to smooth out international supply chains and make international business flow more smoothly, or are we now in a more protectionist world? I mean, will the data be subject to protectionist ideals? I don't know.
Well,
how can it be? But I mean,
yeah. I mean, either way. I mean, this is simply doing what's happening in other industries. I mean, almost every industry has this point where you've got this where the handoffs have to be smoother.
Smooth, yeah.
You've got to. I mean, and certainly in the supply chain, and this is just a very specific part of the supply chain.
Yeah.
But supply chain communication and stuff is something that we talk about a lot with a lot of our vendors.
Yeah.
Is that's part of what their software does.
Well,
it's kind of smoothing that whole transition.
And to me, I mean, it's interesting that this is another thing. As I say, ISO's got their hands in so many pies, fingers in so many pies. But this is an important thing.
Yeah.
That standardization really does help. Harmonization really does help. And that's why you have an ISO in the world, to kind of bring together all these stakeholders and say, hey, we have a standard, this is what it means, and you're going to follow that standard through the supply chain. It's important stuff.
Okay.
Yep.